que sus parientes todo le daban en su...
This is a story about evil. It's also a story about survival. People seem to know what good is, but when it comes to bad things, evil things, few of us understand what they are, and even fewer of us have learned how to survive them. So, whose story is this that I'm here to tell you? I'm in the home of 95-year-old Moshe Ha-Elyon. I'm on the 14th floor of a tower block in Bat Yam, which is south of Tel Aviv in Israel. We stand and admire the view. Moshe Elyon is very proud of his view, rightly so. The mist is rising over the Mediterranean, as if it's trying to shield us from the memories of the Europe that he fled in 1946. I've come to his home to ask him about his experiences in Auschwitz, but also to ask him about the hard years that followed, which were the real challenge. This is when the surviving really began. But why do I want to tell his story? Well, my father was a surgeon in a hospital in London where I grew up. At the hospital, his best friends were Polish. They were all doctors. They were older than my parents, but they were frequent visitors to our house. They had survived Auschwitz and the Warsaw Ghetto. They were feisty people, and they used to regale me with their wartime stories, and it left in me a fascination for fascism, communism, and above all, evil. They didn't have any children, so they had all the time in the world to talk to me. One of them had lost her child in Auschwitz. The other one had been operated on by the notorious Dr. Mengele. She wasn't Jewish. She lived a life in extreme pain, and my father spent many hours in the operating theatre trying to repair the damage that Mengele's scalpel had done. His hand went where Mengele's had gone. He often used to pick me up from school, and the budding journalist that I used to ask him lots of questions about his day, hoping we were going to get some gruesome details. But the really important thing that he used to tell me was that there are good doctors and bad doctors, just like there are good people and bad people. Over the years, my interest in evil, in survival, has matured, and that's what's brought me here to the home of Moshe Ha-Elyon.
Welcome to my home, Rosie. Let's sit down. We have tea and cakes. Do you want milk? You are from London. You must, I forgot.
No, I'm fine. I take it black, actually.
So, tell me why you are here. I know you're writing a book, but why are you interested? Whitehouse doesn't sound like a Jewish name, if you don't mind me asking.
It's not the first time I've been asked this question, and I always answer, Tim, my husband, is Jewish, and my married name is Judah. Often survivors say to me, now that's a relief. I don't have to hide and watch what I have to say. And I'm left wondering what they hide when they speak to people who are not Jewish.
Oh, I see. Okay. Then we can start at the beginning. I'll tell you my story. I was born in Salonika in 1925. You know where that is? Greece. Before the Second World War, Thessalonica was one of the great Jewish cities of Europe. We are different, not like the Jews in Poland and elsewhere. I speak Ladino, not Yiddish, and am Sephardim. In Auschwitz, the Polish Jews thought we were exotic.
The important thing here is that the Polish Jews had no illusions when they arrived at the death camps, and they often fought for their lives. News of the gas chambers had been brought out of Poland by the underground, and the Allies were well aware of it. But the story never made the front page, and it was a silence that condemned Moshe's family to death.
It was spring, the spring of 1943, when we were rounded up into the ghettos in Salonika. The conditions were terrible. My father died and we were desperate. We had no food. When in April we heard that people were being resettled in Poland, we thought life might be better there. My mother, my grandparents, my sister Nina, my uncle, my uncle's wife and baby we all volunteered to go. We had no idea what was happening. No idea at all. No idea at all.
I sense not anger, but bewilderment. Moshe has looked evil in the face, and he's gone on to raise a family and live a happy life. How did he manage to do that?
Look, that's me. Just after we were liberated. Ebensi concentration camp in Austria. Do you recognize me? That's me. You have no idea. No idea at all, unless you were there. 4.5 months after the Holocaust, in the safety of Italy, I began to record dates and notes of what had happened, but I soon abandoned the whole thing. I had to build a new life. It would be decades before I finished this book. There was no time for pain and sorrow. If you wanted to survive, you could only look forward.
I know the book. I have a copy in my handbag, and it's one of the reasons that I'm here. Holocaust survivors react to their experiences in a myriad of ways, and Moshe writes poetry in Ladino, which he sings in his frail voice.
Conceda la vestían, llevaba joyas d'oro, la alonjaban siempre de males y de lloro.
It's about my sister, Nina. But you don't understand a word of it, do you? The translation is not so good, I think. One day, the evil Nazis, far from her nest, they stole her. Together with her parents, they took her to the lager. They stayed 6 days in wagons, locked up by day and night. In darkness, they remained there, without seeing daylight. It's called The Maiden in the Lager. You know what a lager is?
Yeah, camp.
You speak German?
No, not at all.
I was lucky. I understood some German. Most of us from Salonika didn't. It meant when the train arrived in Auschwitz, I could understand the words of warning whispered by the prisoners waiting to unload our bags. They said, "Say you are older than you are. Don't look sick." They spoke in Yiddish, which is close enough to German, and I understood. I was separated from my mother and sister Nina on the ramp when we arrived and sent to work as a laborer. She's possibly awake. She possibly is dreaming. Her soul can hardly fathom the terror she is feeling. In seeing guards and soldiers, the fences and barbed wire, the troops with dogs and weapons, the circumstance was dire. She knew from now and onward, her life had changed forever. Her world has been destroyed. Not free she will be ever. With evening came the darkness. She feels sad like no other. I was there and I did not know what was going on until one day a friend pointed at the smoke belching out of a tall chimney. Soot was raining down on us. My friend pointed at the chimney and told me my family were dead. They had gone up in smoke. I thought he had lost his mind. Something had happened to him. I simply could not believe the Germans could do this.
I can see that Moshe's still shocked. It's like his face froze the moment he discovered exactly what happened to his family.
Look, I got these documents from Auschwitz that detail how I was condemned to 25 lashes. Look, it's all here.
It's like he's showing me vital evidence that backs up his story. And actually, that's exactly what he is doing. This is a crime that has never been punished. It's a myth that the people who carried out the Holocaust were ever brought to justice. There's been no closure for this crime. They got away with it.
My daughter simply could not understand how I walked of my own free will to have the sentence carried out. One day, years later, I saw the man whose job it was to carry out the punishment in Tel Aviv. What did I do? I did nothing. How do I know if he let me off lightly, as this was my one and only experience? What do I know? You don't know how it was if you were not there. You cannot understand the unimaginable.
And this is the problem with the story of the Holocaust. As it fades into history, it's so unfathomable that it can easily be disbelieved.
I survived, but that was just the beginning. You want to know how I came to be here in Israel? This is important too. After the liberation, all I wanted to do was to return to Greece. My family was Zionists, but they never thought of going to Palestine to live. We had our whole lives in Salonika. It was a whole Jewish world. But then something happened. We were in lorries moving through the beautiful Austrian countryside, being taken home, when I suddenly spotted a convoy of trucks with the Star of David on. The soldiers had little signs on their arms that had the Star of David on. I realized they were Jews, and it was a wonder. Jews with guns. We were in a village near Villac, near the border with Italy. We seized the chance to speak to them. I'd studied Hebrew at school, so I was able to talk to them. I told them we were going back to Greece. What are you doing going back to Greece, they asked us. You have no family there, and there is a civil war going on. If you go back, you'll be called up into the army. You will never guess who they were. They were members of the Jewish Brigade, a unit of the British Army in Palestine that had fought up Italy. Ignoring army command, they had crossed into Austria to help us, the survivors. When I met them, I realized that the world I had grown up in was no longer there. There was simply no home to go back to. I decided to go to Palestine to start a new life in a place we could all be safe. The Jewish soldiers took us to a small fishing village in the heel of Italy. We were the first group to arrive. In time, thousands of survivors came from all over Europe, from Poland, Romania, from all over Eastern Europe, and all they wanted to do was to go to Palestine. One of them was Hannah. She was Romanian. I liked her. At first we spoke with our hands, but then I taught her some Hebrew and she taught me some Yiddish. That was how it began. Soon we adopted her into our group and she became an honorary Greek. The Jewish soldiers told us all about Palestine and I got very excited, but I realized that the Poles were going before us as we Greeks just sat around. I got so angry. We made a real fuss. We threw tables and chairs until they agreed to take us to Palestine. After that, we were quickly moved to Rome and told we would be taken to Genoa to be smuggled into Palestine.
What the survivors were not expecting is that when they arrived off the shore in Haifa, the boat was stormed by the Royal Navy.
Ah, yes. But we fought back and hurled potatoes and cans of food at them. They took us to an internment camp with barbed wire and watchtowers. Can you believe it? I was there for weeks before they released me.
Moshe has told me that when he and his wife Hannah arrived here in 1946, he was so poor that he built them a lean-to shack behind a laundry where they worked on Levinsky Street. Moshe, the night is drawing in and I've taken enough of your time, and I could stay all evening, but it's late and I must go. Would it be possible for me to take your picture before I leave?
Of course.
Let me show it to you.
I didn't look that old even yesterday. Rosie, we must never stop talking about the Holocaust. Never.
This story is not just about an old man who writes poems. It's also the story of how a survivor in striped pajamas became a suntanned Israeli soldier with a gun. Survivors reacted in a myriad of ways. The complexity of the Holocaust continued in their reactions and continues today in those of their descendants. Much of the way survivors reacted depended on where they were and where they found themselves after the war. Moshe had just arrived in Palestine. It was a land engulfed in first civil war and then full-blown war between Israel and its neighbors.
I fought and was wounded in 1948. I was a soldier in the IDF for over 20 years, after which I worked in the Ministry of Defense. Keeping my family safe was my priority.
Muy querida, que sus parientes